law that is rooted in the history of Islam, and in particular things that were either said or attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. Now, that is to say, they have their own view of things, and it's not one that's widely shared by Muslims or even widely shared by radical jihadist Muslims. So their view of things is that if they try to recreate the early days of Islam, which they consider a golden period, then they will have the favor of God, and they'll be able to run their state in Mesopotamia in the best possible way.
When you look at al-Baghdadi versus a bin Laden, what do you think differentiates them?
There are a few things. One is that he actually controls some real estate. So bin Laden was pretty much on the run for most of the time. He was well known to Americans. And Baghdadi has controlled a small fledgling state based in Raqqa, Syria, for most of that time. But there's also one other thing that's particular to his interpretation of Islamic law, and that is that he is from a particular tribe called the Qurayshi. And in Islamic law, there's something called a caliph. He's the head of the caliphate, and to be caliph, you have to have that lineage. Osama bin Laden did not have it, but Baghdadi actually does.
So he has that, but you also note in this piece that he doesn't have the support of even a majority of the ultra-radical Muslims. So does he have a risk there in terms of how effectively he can stay in power?
Right now, he really does control the territory. He controls quite well. But there is a risk, certainly, that he would be alienating huge numbers of people, not just everyday Muslims who have no interest in fighting, but also in the radical old guard of al-Qaeda. And really, the older they are, the less likely they are to be signing on to his claim to be the only true, rightful leader of Muslims.
You write about him saying, quote, giving Baghdadi more time as a caliph might only make him more plausible in the role and allow him to draw more fighters to his state. We've certainly seen that happen. You go on to say, if that is true, one concerned Western scholar told me we would be wise to kill him fast. Right now, only an infinitesimal number of Muslims have sworn fealty to him. The biggest danger is letting that number grow. How do you take him out? Is this someone who is hiding in a cave? Is this someone who is hiding like Osama bin Laden was hiding, a little more in plain sight, if you will, than many had thought? You know, what should the tactic be here?
Well, there are definitely people in the Defense Department who are working very hard to take him out right now, and I don't know exactly how they're going to end up doing it. But one thing that differentiates him from bin Laden is that he has a return address. That is, he controls a particular piece of land. And so if we can take that area under our control or find him in one of the places where he has to be, then finding him and assassinating will be something we can do.
Quickly before we go, in terms of a successor, does ISIS have a successor in mind for al-Baghdadi?
We don't know who their successor is, but almost certainly they do have someone in mind. Now, they do have to have all the requirements of a caliph lined up, and because they have this strict, punctilious view of Islamic law, those requirements are quite specific, and so it might be more difficult than some might think for them to find a particular person who fits all the requirements for their new caliph.
Yeah, clearly this is someone who is sharply in focus among intelligence officials around the world. A fascinating article. Graham Wood, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.